Welcome to the Smores Indoors Podcast, the perfect combination of talk and interviews between my favorite podcast hosts. Now please, sit back, relax, and welcome your host, Corey.
Welcome to the Smores Indoors Podcast. I am Corey, your host, and I am joined here with Jonathan. Jonathan, how's your quarantine been?
It's been terrible. How about yours?
About the same, basically. I mean, I'm not complaining about being home more, but I also am tired of being home more. So
Exactly.
I'll be glad when it's all wrapped up and we can get back to some type of normal. I don't know how normal it's going to be, but we'll see, I guess. What else has been going on? Have you watched anything cool lately?
No, man, I've been trying to go through the backlog, I had a bunch of Scream Factory titles, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later, in. I've been trying to catch up on those, and what I end up mostly doing is watching the features on them, because I've usually seen the feature presentation, so.
Well, beyond my typical YouTube rabbit hole crap, I've been watching the Chicago Bulls series, The Last Dance, on ESPN, and there's been some interesting stuff I didn't know come out of that so far. So,
oh yeah, it's great, man.
Didn't really know how hated their GM was within the team.
No, I didn't, dude. And I felt kind of bad after I found out he died a couple years ago too. So he can't even be there to defend it.
Hasn't made him hold back any.
No, from what I understand, MJ had the final say on that entire documentary. That was the only way he'd do it. So
I think he probably had the final say on everything back then too. So
yeah, it's definitely good.
Yeah. So I did want to hype coming up. We have Heath Holland from serialatmidnight.com. We're going to be talking boutique Blu-ray releases and just everything about those. And then we'll kind of follow up a little later with our own discussion about that. But I had a couple news topics thought maybe we would bring up. This first one, I saw this. I didn't really see this a whole lot of places. But, Child's Play is always, you typically think of Tom Holland and Don Mancini when you talk about Child's Play. But co-screenwriter John Lafia passed away recently at the age of 63, and unfortunately it was determined to be a suicide.
Oh man, I didn't catch that part. I just saw where he had passed away.
Obviously co-wrote Child's Play and also directed Child's Play 2, and he passed away on April 29th. And I hope wasn't a result of this whole pandemic thing, just depression. I know people are probably depressed having to stay inside, and this probably has added upon that. So hopefully that's not the case. But your thoughts on, I guess, the Child's Play series?
Oh man, I love the Child's Play series, and I actually didn't know till yesterday that he had directed part 2, which is my favorite Child's Play movie.
Yeah, I think there was a quote there from Mancini talking about that being kind of the beloved sequel from many fans. So
absolutely, it's stronger than the original, honestly, in my opinion.
Those sequels are fun. They're always fun to watch. And
okay. I was gonna say, I just saw here where he actually. Do you remember the Sega 32X game Corpse Killer?
I recall that. Yeah,
he was the director over that. So
that's
yeah,
cool.
I'm sure that's not making the headlines, but yeah, that's cool.
No, I think he was involved with Man's Best Friend, that movie.
Directed.
Yeah. No, another probably not as heralded horror icon, but obviously had his hand in some iconic properties there. So
absolutely
fortunate to see him gone.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Yes. Hellraiser TV series is being developed by HBO, and you know how those sequels, the Hellraiser sequels, are kind of trashed as it may be, but anytime I see that something's being developed by HBO, it gives me a little hope because they don't fall on their face too often. So whether you like the Halloween 2018 movie or not, David Gordon Green, who was the director of that, is working on this project as well. So
have they said whether Clive Barker would have any kind of involvement in it, or?
I did not see that anywhere. I do know this is not tied into anything to do with that remake or reimagining that was scheduled to be upcoming, but we'll see. Again, like I said, I feel like anytime HBO puts out a show, they put out quality. So
oh yeah, that's a good sign.
We'll cross our fingers and hope for good things there. And then the final story, and we'll kind of dive into this a little deeper. We've talked about this in other formats, but I did see that John Wick 4 and Saw 9, which is going to be called Spiral, have been delayed for a full year by Lionsgate. That goes along with movies like Fast and the Furious 9, and I know the James Bond movie has been delayed quite a while. I feel like these movies, we've talked about the Universal AMC kind of debacle that's going on right now, but John Wick 4 and Spiral, Saw 9, whatever you want to call it, those are going to be movies that they're going to want to have in a theater setting because they're going to bring out crowds. No matter what you think about the Saw series, it does bring out a crowd. So
they print money, man. That's right. We're in for a really rude awakening come I'd say September. There's going to be no new content that's going to be hitting anything. Theaters, streaming platform, nothing until early next year. We're just going to hit a dry spell here at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that, I guess these studios are probably going to play it by ear, whether or not they just go straight VOD or if they do a combination or if they want to do the normal theatrical run. With that success the Trolls World Tour had on VOD for Universal, it's going to be a question where they can break in a little more money that way too. They don't have to give so much to the theaters and save some money on marketing. But I do have an issue with Trolls World Tour, and I'll tell you why. It's kind of a weird reason. So I've told you before that I've been on a vinyl kick and buying a lot of vinyl. I was on the hunt for a Trolls 2 vinyl soundtrack, and everywhere I searched for that, I was getting the vinyl soundtrack for the Trolls World Tour movie. So, who in the hell would want that? So,
dude, in my car, it is Trolls all the time, buddy. So it's from the first movie, but yeah, no, that I can see that. Of course they're going to be putting that out. So
that's similar to my life. Trolls all the time. That could be like my life. So
did you find the Troll 2 soundtrack? Did they put that out?
I did finally find it. $25. I purchased that thing, and it's pretty cool. So
nice.
So that's some of the news I pulled out. We'll keep an eye on what's going on. Obviously things are kind of slow because everyone's at home. And you can't produce much news sitting at home. So I think what we'll do right now, we'll kick it to the interview with Heath, and we will see you on the other side. So we are now joined by Heath Holland. Heath is the proprietor of SerialAtMidnight.com and the Serial at Midnight YouTube channel. So Serial at Midnight is dedicated to discovering and exploring the coolest stuff from pop culture. It's about movies and music and comics, but it's also about finding and exploring wonderful offbeat destinations. It's about celebrating the unusual and the unsung with no irony at all. The name is designed to convey the feeling you get from staying up into the wee hours of the morning, munching on a bowl of your favorite cereal while you watch cartoons, science fiction movies, and classic horror films. From the videos on YouTube to the written reviews and articles at SerialAtMidnight.com, Serial at Midnight is dedicated to preserving magic and wonder in our everyday lives. Heath, welcome to this Smores Indoors Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm a huge personal fan of your content and everything you do. And I couldn't think of anyone better to have on to talk about boutique Blu-rays because I saw you have been buying a few lately. So
I have a few. Yeah, this is all green screen. Someone once said one time, they were like, that's all green screen behind you. It was like, if only it was.
So how's your quarantine been?
That's been good. I've stayed busy, very, very busy, busier than before it started. What about you?
Oh, pretty much the same. I've actually been away from work through this, so
okay,
kind of furloughed, but it's all been good. So
yeah,
hey, watch movies. I got that going for me. So
yeah, it's a great time to discover things and to reconnect with things.
Right. So I'll go ahead and get into things. And there's a couple questions. Anyone I'm going to talk to about film on this podcast, I have a couple questions I'm going to start out with. So, what are your early memories of watching movies kind of growing up?
I don't remember not watching movies, so I don't know if I can. They were always there. One of my earliest movie memories is seeing Winnie the Pooh and the Sword and the Stone, the Disney Sword and the Stone. No, is that what it's called? Hold on, you know the one I'm talking about, the King Arthur. It's the Sword and the Stone, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. It's too many movies. Seeing that in the theater, and then also somewhere around that time, maybe shortly after, I remember seeing Follow That Bird. It was, it's kids movies at the time. It was all, and my early movies are connected to the theater, so it wasn't some home video sort of a thing. It was sitting in the theater for re-releases and the Sesame Street movie.
I tell you what, I have a strange first movie theater experience. I remember being taken to this movie. For some reason, I had this desire to go see the Bob Fosse, All That Jazz, when I was like 3 years old. So
okay,
probably not a movie I should have went to see at 3.
Yeah.
But hey, it did get
wow.
So well, no.
Yeah, and nothing was ever the same again.
No, it's I've been insane ever since. So
are you gonna bust into song and dance in the middle of this podcast?
I have been doing some quarantine karaoke, but probably not during the podcast. So unfortunately,
what if I just start you?
We get some West Side Story duets going here.
Yeah.
So talk about that. Can you pinpoint a time when film for you kind of became less just watching the movie and more about appreciating what the filmmaker was doing, whether it be technically or in the content?
Yeah, it was a period of time. There are 3 movies that I kind of attribute to this. The most important one I'll name last, but it started with 1989's Batman, because it was the first time. It was such a phenomenon. And those who lived through it, are we remotely the same age? Like, are we close to the same age?
I'm 43, so.
Okay, and I'm 40. So that the zeitgeist, man. No, as popular as the Avengers are or anything like that, I don't think I've ever seen such a wide cultural phenomenon that so much of society was in on. And it was just like total immersion. And so I remember, during the time of 89's Batman, just being interested in being aware of Tim Burton as a filmmaker. They had trading cards for the Batman trading cards, and there were cards with production art, like sketches of the, like concept art and stuff, production art, or like behind the scenes stills of like Tim Burton directing Michael Keaton and stuff like that. And it just, that's one of the first times I can remember being like, oh wait, so who wrote this and who was responsible for the art? And then, it wasn't just like they took a Bob Kane comic and just we'll just shoot this. Like I became aware of the people, and then that transferred into 1990s Dick Tracy, because I was super, a lot of people thought that Dick Tracy was going to be the second coming of Batman. And I think maybe that was how it was maybe conceived as well, is that we'll capture that comic book wave that was birthed by Batman. And of course it didn't, but I was very aware of Warren Beatty and the personal stuff going on behind the scenes. And then the movie that it kind of finally all kind of cemented for me was the year later. So 89 to 90 and 91 was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And I was so invested in the actors and the talents. And at the time, I'm coming into, they say the stuff that you love at 12 is what you'll love for the rest of your life. And I think that must be true, because that's how old I was at the time. And again, the novelization, the articles in Entertainment Weekly or Rolling Stone, like all these, anything I could get my hands on, I was reading about this movie. So it's 3, but between the 3 of them, that really, like, I owe those movies so much.
Right. I think for me, it was around that same time. I live in a small town in southern Indiana, and A League of Their Own filmed basically all around my town. So I think that was the first movie it really got into my mind that, hey, this is how a movie is done, how it's filmed. And and it kind of gave me a greater appreciation for that process.
Nice.
So in terms of collecting physical media, when did you start as it pertains to movies, not necessarily music? Or
started collecting movies on VHS around 95. When I got a job, when I was able to go into the marketplace and become an earner, I was like, I have this money, and I was a movie fan. I mean, I was just the younger version of who I am now. So I was like, well, I love Monty Python, and I don't own Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I got to fix this. So Suncoast in the mall. I just remember, like, I would work, and then I would drive to the mall, and I would just, like, Suncoast Motion Picture Company they were expensive as all get out. It's like $24.99 for a lot of stuff, $19.99, and I was making like $5 an hour, maybe less than that. Maybe it was like $4.25 an hour, I think, at the start. But that's what I was spending it on. It was around 95, and I was also a member of the the Columbia House Doctor Who videotape fan club. So every month you'd get a new Doctor Who video cassette in the mail. So those are the first ones.
Okay. So I want to go back to those VHS days. Kind of the predecessor to the Blu-ray boutique labels was, kind of a similar thing with Anchor Bay. They were really putting out a lot of things that people, especially horror fans, wanted to see. And it's important to realize back then it wasn't like now when there was the new release Tuesdays out there. I mean, a lot of VHS tapes were over $100 if you wanted to try to buy them. Were you a fan of those Anchor Bay releases? Did you purchase a lot of those?
I don't remember Anchor Bay until later 90s. I had the Evil Dead movies on VHS. I think those were Anchor Bay.
Yeah.
But at the time when I first got into it, I was not really. No, I was looking for my own weird passions and stuff. And there's also some of that stuff was just not allowed in my house because I can't separate those early days of collecting from having grown up in a very conservative household that, like, R-rated movies were not allowed in the house.
Gotcha.
So doesn't mean they didn't show up, but they weren't technically allowed in the house.
Sure.
So no, I don't have any early Anchor Bay VHS memories, but later in the 90s I do for sure.
Okay. Well, then the other kind of OG in terms of, I guess, boutique labels back then is Criterion, which of course is still going on now. They go back to the Laserdisc days even. To me, they're still one of the top 4 distributors, in my opinion, I guess, today, along with Shout or Scream Factory and Arrow. And then to me, probably the least appreciated, I think, is Kino. They kind of span the whole gamut of releases. Beyond those 4, though, who are some of the companies you think are putting out really good stuff today?
Anybody who watches Serial at Midnight knows that I adore Mill Creek Entertainment. I think that they're putting out so many obscure cult things that, when I first started collecting stuff, it was those. Okay, so the early days of DVDs, those big, like, 50 packs of movies and stuff that you'd find, you didn't know what you were going to get, but you'd get Bela Lugosi and you'd get Boris Karloff, and then they'd be like alongside Vincent Price. And Mill Creek has grown out of that into like the Blu-rays for the TV shows that I grew up on, like Knight Rider and the A-Team. Not the A-Team, Miami Vice. Let me look at the shelf real quick here. Miami Vice, Knight Rider, Quantum Leap is another great one. Airwolf, like they're whatever it is that they're connected with. I don't know what their exact plans are, but so much of the time they're putting out things. There was a show talking about Robin Hood. And around 1991, there was a show that came on, I think it was on the Family Channel, which was a cable channel in the early 90s. And it was called Crossbow. And it was like a William Tell origin story, but it was done in that like gritty late 80s, early 90s style of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I think maybe some of that. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves was influenced by a UK show, Robin of Sherwood, which was very like earthy and dirty. And I think that was just kind of what was happening at the time, kind of like a rock and roll version of these legends. I saw this show when I was a kid. I don't think it had any sort of it may have had a VHS release, but if it's, back then there was no internet to just be like, well, I'll just see if it's on, there was no eBay, there was no Amazon. Lo and behold, like 2 years ago, Mill Creek releases Crossbow, the complete series on DVD. And I was like, it was a dream that I've held on to for 25 years, and now I have this DVD. So they're one of my favorites. But I also love, who else? As you say, Kino is. They release so many of the studio classics that just have, in a lot of cases, just been forgotten about.
Right.
Because they're not horror. You know, we may get into this in this discussion, but it seems like horror is the number one leader of home media. Right. Such a cult following for horror stuff. But Kino doesn't, it's studio classics. It's all those weird offbeat movies that fall through the cracks from the major distributors. And I guess they're not profitable for mainstream. You know, even in the heyday of DVD, I don't know how many of these movies were selling 30,000 units, you know? And so, I like them. Who else do I like? Umbrella out of Australia. They put out some really cool stuff that doesn't have distribution anywhere else. All the Ozploitation movies. Look around and see who else. Who am I? You can tell me too. Who am I forgetting that's doing really good stuff? You said Shout.
When you go with the cult classics or horror, I think Vinegar Syndrome does a great job with their releases.
Severin Films as well. They do good stuff.
Vinegar Syndrome has that 4K of Rad coming soon. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, that was on their wish list for years to have a good release of that. I'm so glad you mentioned Mill Creek, because I feel like back in the day it was like Mill Creek and Echo Bridge were the cheapo companies. Yeah. But Mill Creek has come such a long way and putting out really great stuff. And then with Kino, this is a movie like I grew up with, Tough Guys.
Yeah.
I can't believe that got a release. So
yeah,
I was thrilled to see that. So, but yeah, there are, a lot of companies out there, and you just kind of have to search for, what you're looking for. So when you're out hunting for releases, what are you looking for primarily? Is it, if it's upgrade worthy, or, what is it that makes you take that leap if you have the DVD, I guess?
I am looking to upgrade any DVD if it's something that I care about. And I'm not interested in everything, but I do know what I like, and I like a lot of stuff. And so, and we live in a day, Kino has these wonderful sales all the time, and you can pick up stuff for, they're doing a While Supplies Last sale right now, and there's stuff in there for $5. So I'm looking to discover things. I'm looking for holes in my knowledge. I'm looking for actors that I love. And yeah, I'll upgrade over DVD anytime on something that I'm, really, really interested in. My interest, again, anybody that watches Serial at midnight knows, like, I'm less interested in modern, big budget blockbuster stuff, and I'm more interested in the handmade. I say they're retro, but they're for 100 years. That's all there was. It was like the handmade $10 million movies or the $5 million movies that had studio talent in them that did not get, they came out, people saw them, then they went away. And then on VHS, they got VHS releases, but when the video stores died, no one's really discovering those movies anymore. That's the stuff that I'm really interested in. So, I'm always looking for upgrading stuff that I have on. Here's a good upgrade: This Island Earth. There's a new. It's been out for several months now, but Scream Factory put out this stellar Blu-ray of This Island Earth, and I only had that in a. It was a bootleg. It was like this old bootleg, because that was a movie that hasn't been given respect.
Right.
Partly because of Mystery Science Theater 3000, partly just because it was so obscure and so of a different time. But I had a bootleg of that movie, and this was Scream Factory comes with this new transfer, huge documentary from Ballyhoo Films, which do fantastic work. I think there's a commentary on there. It was just loaded. So that's the sort of thing. Anytime a movie that I feel like has not been given its due gets its due. Severin Films with the Al Adamson set that's coming out in just days, I guess, as of this recording. Those are movies that have never been given much legitimacy because of what they weren't legitimate to begin with. They're bargain basement exploitation films. And now they're getting this stellar high definition box set loaded with extras. It's a must. You know what I mean? It's a must.
Yeah. So I kind of expand on that. You're talking about the sales, which you always do a great job in letting people know.
Thank you.
Your social media or your YouTube about sales that are out there. But you know, these releases are quality products, and that comes with a price. How do you make the decision on whether when a title comes out, if you're going to wait for a sale versus if it's something that you want to get as soon as possible?
I try to support as much as I can when it comes out, because I know that these companies, you know, we have to do what's best for us, but these companies need us to support the product as well. That's why during these quarantine times, I've tried to participate in as many sales as I can, because the companies could use the revenue. And I know pre-orders help for companies too. I think that sometimes we don't factor in that as the fan community. We're like, well, you know, I see just from what I do on YouTube, I see so many people say, well, I'm going to wait till this is like, it'll be $5 in a year. It'll be $5. It'll be a Black Friday. Now with a studio title, I can kind of understand that. Like when Trolls 2, everybody's talking about Trolls 2 right now. When Trolls World Tour comes out on Blu-ray, I'm probably not going to pick that up. But man, Black Friday 2 years from now, maybe I will. But something like, okay, so Kino Lorber just released a movie called Cattle Annie and Little Britches. It's got a young Diane Lane. She's like 14 years old. I mean, like teenage Diane Lane. And Amanda Plummer from Pulp Fiction, the Annie up you, that she, when they're young, they're kids.
Right.
And it's this Western. Burt Lancaster's in it. And I was like, pre-order, man, day one. I got to have this thing so I can support this release. 2, I want to see it. Who else is going to release Cattle Annie and Little Britches? So, you know, I try to support as much as I can, as soon as I can, because they need it. Right.
For sure. So, along with that, you know, there are things that have value, people are out there sometimes trying to take advantage of people. You had an experience with that one time with some releases at Walmart. Is that correct?
That's going to haunt me forever. Yes. Yes. Do you want me to tell that story?
Yeah, if you want to tell that story, and maybe what people may be on the lookout for things like that might come up.
Yeah, so I will say that there's a video about this, and the video is intended to be funny. I put dramatic music and dramatic title cards in there, and people to this day are like, "You got what you deserve, you piece of crap." And I'm like, "It's a joke. Like, it's fine." Okay, so I was at Walmart, and this was around the time that Severin had released Zombie 3 and Zombie 4. It was like Zombie After Death. Is it after? It's the third and fourth zombie movies. This Walmart was going through a reset. Like they were moving the media section to a whole other part of the store. So stuff was all in disarray. And there was things I've never seen before. They were like Warner Archive titles. And you know, Warner Archive titles don't show up in Walmart. And there was these new Severin titles, Zombie 3 and Zombie 4. And they, of course, no price. They have the little scanners. So I took it over. It was like, bloop, and it did not come up in the system. So I was like, this is weird. And they were in blue cases. But I was like, maybe Severin made a deal with Walmart. And it's like a direct distribution thing. Because it's possible. And I took it over to an employee. And I was like, these are not in the system. But I'm interested in them. Can you tell me how much they are? And at this point, I don't remember how much. I think they were $5 or something like that. She was like, well, just say $5. So I was like, oh, yeah. So I came home. I got that. I also Lair of the White Worm from Vestron Video, which was the legitimate Lair of the White Worm. Like that was the actual product. So there's no rhyme or reason to this story.
Right.
So I run home. I'm like, I have a YouTube channel. This is a great story. See, guys, physical media and perseverance, it'll always pay off. So I come home, turn on the camera, and I'm like, look, guys, haven't even opened them yet because I'm so excited about it. And then I turn off the camera when I finish up, and I'm like, all right, let's pop one of these in. I take off the shrink wrap, and I open it up. And they're the old DVDs from, I don't even remember the company off the top of my head. They were about 20 years old. It's like early 2000 stuff. Bad, not restorations, bad transfers, not Blu-rays, just DVDs. And I was like, wait a minute, no CDs, because the Severin releases had the CD soundtracks in there as well. I was like, wait a minute. So I'm starting to put things together in my head. I was like, well, this has got to be some sort of a scam. Is this a mistake or is this a scam? And then I start looking around, and the best I can figure is that this is a scam that people do where they take I don't know if they print the artwork themselves, which I guess you could. You could just print it out on a copier, but it didn't look. It felt legitimate, like it was like glossy paper cover stuff. And the best I can think is that they just put their old discs in the case, and they took the new discs and returned the package with the old. But then this requires sealing it back up. See, it gets real. I still don't know what happened, but so I turned the camera back on. Yeah, I turned the camera back on, and I was like, well, so here's what happened. So, and then I tell the story. But then the pause, and I was able to go back to Walmart because they don't give a duke, man. They don't care. They were like, here's your money back. So I got my refund. Hopefully they didn't put them back out on the shelf. They were open, so hopefully not. But Severin saw the video, and they were like, well, that's weird. Can we send you the official releases? And I was like, yeah, you can. Because, I mean, I already felt like a scumbag. So I was like, $5 Severin new release. I just did that whole thing about supporting labels, right? And here I am trying to do $5. I was like, yeah. But I've come a long way, because that's where I started and where I am now. Not necessarily the same place. But it was embarrassing. But they were so cool about it. They were so nice about it. So it had a happy ending. And I reviewed those. I talk about it every time I get a chance. I was like, yeah, those movies, like, look what Severin did. They didn't know me. I could have done it myself. I could have scammed the thing myself. But that's what people say. I scammed. The whole thing is a fiction so that I could get attention. So I get views and I get subscribers. So it's like, how does it make me look good? Why would you want to subscribe to me after the story? Right. So that's what happened. And it is a true story.
Such a weird story. So note to everyone out there, just watch what you're buying.
And since I've gone back, I still see things that show up at that particular Walmart, and I'm like, there's no way this is real. There's no way.
See, I bought the Vestron put out the Maximum Overdrive, and that showed up at Walmart, and I was leery to buy it, but I did, and I think it's official. So
yeah,
it actually did scan properly. So I know you don't talk really about favorites, with stuff on your channel, but
it's just hard to choose. It's not that I don't have. It's like everything's my favorite at the moment.
You've talked about a few releases, but have there been any in the last few years that have really impressed you, whether it be the special features or transfer or things like that?
Sure.
Yeah. Talk about.
So there's the Silent Earth from Scream Factory. That's a fantastic release. Scream Factory also with the Universal horror sets that they're putting out. Really, really great stuff, because those have been available on DVD. Those movies have been available on DVD for a long time, and cheaply as well. But there's like the first volume. The second volume is pretty skimpy on. Actually, I think it has no special features at all. But the first volume has new retrospectives with horror commentators, authors, people who are really invested in like old Universal horror. And it's got like radio dramas, like Bela Lugosi reading The Raven. It's like really cool stuff. And then, so let me go outside of Scream Factory or Shout Factory. I love the exploitation fan in me loves what Mill Creek is doing with the Andy Sedaris catalog. They've got new. Those have all been restored from the American Genre Film Archive. And I think those are amazing. If you told me 1 year ago, hey, all of the Andy Sedaris Malibu Bay films are about to get Blu-rays with all the existing special features, commentaries with Andy Sedaris. I mean, and they're going to be like $8.99. I'd be like, what? No. But here they are. They're almost done. They've announced all 12 of them. What else? Let me just look around for a second, because I was prepared for this, but there's so much.
While you're thinking, a couple I'll mention is, and going back to Scream Factory, or those Vincent Price releases they put out.
Two of those are out of print now,
Yes. And another one out of print is, I just feel like it was such an undertaking for them to get all those Halloween films in one box set. And
can you see it over my shoulder here? Okay.
So those are two that stand out to me that are very, very worth the money. Maybe not the out of print price, but
yeah, for real. That Vincent Price, the volume 1 is going for like $500 or something like that, $400 or $500. I'm like, holy cow! And I'm not interested in selling mine. It has more value as a fan. It has more value than selling it. On that, they keep saying that, like, well, maybe we'll get a Friday the 13th set, like the Halloween set. And that would be amazing if we do, but it hasn't happened yet. I'm trying to think some of my favorite Kino releases. Kino put out, they continue to just, they put out things I've never heard of. They put out things that I'm just like, well, this is amazing. Like The Master, the complete series of the TV series, The Master, which is it's Lee Van Cleef as a ninja master. And it's Sho Kasugi, or Kasugi, however you want to pronounce it, who was the legitimate martial arts master. And then just like your all-American 80s young guy in a short-lived mid-80s TV series. That's a fantastic release that I never would have thought. This is another one of those. It's just like, wow, we live in a golden age for this stuff. And I know that mainstream interest may not be where it once was. And I know you can't walk into Target and get whatever you want on new release day, but there's dozens of things coming out each and every week, Tuesdays or whenever it comes out. There's so much stuff coming out that we've never had access to as much as we do right now, in better versions than anyone has ever had access to. People in the theater 50 years ago it may have looked good to them on that the first screening before it got hair and dirt in the print. Yeah. We're just blessed. Who else? I mentioned the Al Adamson set. That one blows my mind too. Vinegar Syndrome is putting out all these Giallo sets, which are, if you're into Giallo and like Italian horror and stuff, those are incredible as well. Who am I leaving out? So I've covered Mill Creek. I've covered. I also said this, the TV stuff that Mill Creek is doing lately. They just put out a box set of 30 Rock, and it's incredible. It's legitimately incredible. It's every single, as far as I know, it's all of the extras from the DVDs. It's the high definition Blu-ray debut of that series.
I tell you, one company I don't think we mentioned yet was Synapse, and they did an excellent job with Suspiria and all of those Argento films. So.
Okay, yeah, and then Blue Underground has been doing Fulci stuff. So they just did a 4K remaster version of House by the Cemetery, Zombie, the Fulci Zombie, and those are coming out in 4K. Synapse also did More to My Heart. They put out one of the Django movies that had fallen through the cracks. Okay. And that was really cool because the original Django, the Sergio Corbucci's first Django movie, gets a lot of love, but then you get into there's so many sequels, and a lot of them are just knockoffs. They're just Django in name only, but some of them are good. And they got this movie, one of the Django the Bastard, as I think the name of the movie in English, but it's the soundtrack for that movie is what Gnarls Barkley took for Crazy, his song Crazy, the bass line. It's like doom 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 doom. It's from Django, and that's the soundtrack that they got the whole thing. They cleaned it up. It's fantastic. We also need to talk about Indicator out of the UK, because Powerhouse Indicator is doing amazing things, like Criterion level preservation for they did 2 Ray Harryhausen sets, and they did a Sinbad set with there are 3 Sinbad movies. One of them has Tom Baker in it, Doctor Who, because I'm a Doctor Who fan. They did these Bud Bedecker westerns, 5 Tall Tales, the William Castle collection. I mean, fantastic stuff. And most of them are region free. Not everything is region free, but a lot of it is safe. If you do a little investigation, most of it's safe for us over here stateside. Good
to hear. So I guess my final question for you, and this is kind of going just opposite of what we were just talking about. Are there maybe 1 or 2 movies that you would like to see get the special boutique treatment? And if so, who do you think would be the best company to put those movies out?
I'm still waiting on Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid on Blu-ray. Warner Archive would be the label for that. There are 2 different cuts of that movie. There's the version that Peckinpah was working on, and then there's the final studio cut, which takes, some say it's better. Well, there's a whole debate about that movie, but they just give them both. Just put them both out on Blu-ray. That would need to be a 2-disc set probably, but that would be Warner Archive because that's a Warner Brothers movie. I suspect they're probably working on it if I had to guess. I don't know anything. I know nothing, but and everything that I ever wondered about seems to be being worked on.
Right.
With Rad, that's another one that we never no. Will Rad ever, it didn't even get a DVD release, if I'm correct. I think that it just skipped the entire DVD generation, and now we're going to 4K with it, baby. So that's another one. I have a few. I would love to see. One of my favorite movies is Wonder Boys, a late 90s. I think it's either 99. It might actually be 2000, but it's Michael Douglas. It's Robert Downey Jr. when he was still a character actor and not Iron Man. It's got Frances McDormand in it and Tobey Maguire. And it boggles my mind that does not have a Blu-ray anywhere. I think that'd be a good fit for Kino. I can't remember what company released it, so that might be part of the holdup, because some companies don't play ball.
Right.
Some studios, but that's another one that's very high on my list, that I think as soon as it gets a release, people will discover it. Because that's another thing, is we're living in a world now where many of these things aren't on streaming. And if there's no Blu-ray, listen, I know so many people that will not watch a DVD. They're like, DVD is like watching, like it's an 8mm, they got to take it out and feed it. Like it's trash, So I know so many people that won't watch a DVD, but if it came out on Blu-ray, it would bump up the notoriety of it again, and it would be back on people's radar. And it needs to be, because it's a really good movie.
Right.
What about you? Do you have anything that you're waiting on?
Oh, they've put so much out that I've been waiting on. It's hard to say. I think there needs to be, and I know there's some holdup with the I can't remember who holds the rights, but the original Romero Dawn of the Dead, I think needs a really good release. And there is
coming out.
Yeah. So I'm anxious for that one, and I'm excited to see what they come out with each month. I know we recently got the My Bloody Valentine. That was a big one that I was waiting for a good loaded release of, and it didn't disappoint either. So I guess I'm more on the horror side, but it's good to talk about all these releases for people that have favorites across all genres. So
even things that we thought were gone, things that got a boutique label, like a small boutique label, like a Scorpion Releasing or a Code Red or something like that. Sometimes those go out of print because they'll print 2,000 or sometimes 3,000. And when they're gone, they're gone. But I know there are so many movies that are just like, well, that's over. I missed that. But then now they're coming back around again. And like Kino Lorber is now helping to distribute both Code Red and Scorpion Releasing titles. So I know things that were gone have come back in print. There's still some that I'm wondering. The Mechanic is one. There's a Charles Bronson movie called The Mechanic. It was a Twilight Time release, I believe. And then it sold out, and we're like, well, we missed it. Nope, it's coming out from Scorpion Releasing in June 3rd, I think. Now, if we could just get Joysticks, the movie Joysticks, re-released on Blu-ray, 80s arcade set sex comedy, I think there'd be a lot of happy people out there.
I would agree. So Heath, thank you so much for your time. Can you tell the people where they can find you and your amazing content?
Oh, thank you, man. Serialatmidnight.com is home base for everything. It's serialatmidnight.com. You can find our social media, you can find all our videos, and you can find the articles. A lot of attention gets sent to our videos and stuff, but we put up articles quite a bit. And so it's all at serialatmidnight.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been an honor having you here, and take care.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. So a lot of good information there from Heath, and I want to kind of double back on that topic of price. And obviously these releases have value for sure, but I think that's an important thing to kind of think about, is if you really want to, weigh that decision on paying full price versus waiting for a sale. But then you also have to throw in that kind of variable that some of these things are limited in quantity, and you have to, really decide, is this thing going to be around whenever I want to buy it? So, what's your thoughts on that?
Man, it's a dangerous game playing that, and I do it all the time. I mean, when you amass a collection, as large as a lot of us listening here, you kind of got to think on price. You can't be given $30 for every single item that you get. You got to wait and see if you can get it on a sale, or maybe you can catch it secondhand. I've had a lot of luck with that using, eBay or just secondhand stores, trying to get some of these titles that aren't necessarily going to be in Walmart, Best Buy, things like that. And when you do that, you miss out sometimes. And like an example is the Friday the 13th 10 that came out a few years ago. I kind of kicked around on that. It was $100. I thought for sure, it's going to go down. It never did, and in fact, it was so limited it went quickly, and then it's been out of print since, and it's bringing 3 times what it originally MSRP'd for. So I mean, you've got to kind of look at who's putting it out. What are they saying about it? Is it going to be a limited thing? And make that decision for yourself. Is it worth it? But I know you can't be spending $30 a piece on all of them.
Right. I think kind of going along with that Friday the 13th set. Scream Factory had that big 15-disc Halloween set. Yep. But they also had the smaller 10-disc set that was in the Walmarts and things like that. And so people may have waited because they could have got the 10-disc set and at least had the movies. But I think that set's even hard to find now. So
it is. It's bringing close to $100.
Yeah. So
online, but I mean, that included Scream Factory releases and Anchor Bay releases, and there was a lot of value in both of those.
Yeah, that was a. I would love to know the behind the scenes story on how everyone came together to get that set out.
I was literally thinking about that while I was driving the other day, because you had Anchor Bay involved in that, Scream Factory, Miramax, and Universal at least.
Yeah.
And Lionsgate. So there was 4 companies or so that you had to go through. It was wild. I remember when they announced that, I thought, man, that was something I never thought I'd see. Yeah. At least with Friday the 13th, you're only dealing with 2 studios. So,
right. So, yeah, now that's, we'll see if there's another Friday the 13th set come out. Hopefully it will. And I just hate that especially with a series that popular, that it's so hard to get a collection like that.
I will say this though, before we move on this, in the Friday the 13th set, if Scream Factory, the rumors are that Scream Factory may be working on a set for that. I do not know how much more behind the scenes you could want after they released that Crystal Lake Memories documentary. What was it? 6 hours? It was there is no way they could cram any more special features. They just have to be some amazing transfers to warrant the upgrade. I mean,
yeah. If it's and I don't know how good those movies could look in 4K, but if it's a 4K box set, that'll maybe,
yeah, I mean,
some more sales going, but
they're not going to reinvent the wheel here with anything you want to hear from behind those movies. I mean, maybe they'll bundle it in with Crystal Lake Memories. Now that would be smart.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you shocked that a company like Scream Factory, which has a reputation of being kind of greedy with double dipping people, and that they haven't tried to start the whole catalog again in 4K?
I think it's coming, because you'll see like Slumber Party Massacre. It just got a re-release on Blu-ray with a new master.
Right.
So they actually have 2 masters concurrently of that title. So I think it's coming. Blue Underground just pulled that. They released the new editions of Maniac and Zombie last year, and now this year we're getting the 4K of that. So that's kind of a slap in the face, I feel like. If somebody you're spending like $40 on that, and then a year later you're getting the true 4K transfer. So
they know a majority of their audience, because a lot of people will take that on and pay for it. So
I mean, I'm gonna buy Zombie. Like, that's my favorite zombie movie of all time. So
yeah,
they got me. So
I think if you choose wisely, if you're doing that with movies that are your favorites,
it's fine.
Go. But I wouldn't do that with every release. And I think those Scream Factory steelbooks, those were all like new transfers. So, but anyway, I thought maybe we could talk about 3 or 4 of our kind of maybe not favorite boutique releases, or they could be your favorites, but also just releases that kind of impressed you that they came out, either whether it be the movie itself or just some of the features that were on the movie. So if you have something you want to start with, we can go there.
Man, body bags, when Scream Factory first really got started and they announced they were going to do body bags, I was really surprised with that. It's a little known anthology. I mean, not little known. It's lesser known than Creepshow or any of the others, but it was great, man. I think it was originally going to be a TV show on Showtime. It's a great flick. Carpenter directed a couple of the segments. He plays the wraparound. What do you want to call that? The host or whatever. He does all the wraparounds. He's in a morgue. That's great, man. That Artisan DVD had been out of print for like 10 plus years when they finally decided to bring that back out. So that was a big one for me. And Scream Factory's really tried to do things like that. I feel like stuff that's hard to get your hands on that people have been clamoring for a while. Even the Nightbreed Cabal cut, which I guess they released as a director's cut. Like, who would have thought a movie that failed initially, it was not a financial success, that had this weird cut that was being passed around with bootlegs and things like that at conventions, that an actual company would come in and put some money behind that. And I'm glad they did, because that movie is fantastic.
I was really impressed with the work they put in on that, because I know there was some issues with audio in that movie, and even Doug Bradley's voice was dubbed over. So I think he came back and recorded audio for that release to replace those scenes, and kind of an impressive job they did on that. Now the $80 price tag was a bit steep, but that is a lot of work they put in on it. So
that's one of those that's like, I can understand it, because like, if you want this, you've been wanting it, so you're gonna pay the money for it. And plus they released an original set. I think you can't get the theatrical cut by itself.
Right.
But they did release which is like $15 now on Amazon, which is something we can talk about when we're just kind of covering Scream Factory, is the price drop that we just kind of got with. So
and they have sales quite often for things on their site.
You got to air quote a Scream Factory sale though. It's
it gets it down to normal range, but occasionally, watch your Best Buys, your Amazons. Sometimes you'll get good deals on their stuff. So
absolutely.
One of the movies that I was really impressed with, and I was impressed with the special features on it. I grew up watching movies at my friend's house as a kid. His mom would just record everything that was on like Showtime and HBO or whatever. And we would always watch Maximum Overdrive as a kid. So when Vestron put that release out, I knew that was kind of a must buy early on, and they really loaded that thing down with the special features, even the little feature about where the face of the truck is now. And it was just cool stuff on that release, so I was happy to buy that one.
I'm ashamed to say I've never actually seen Maximum Overdrive.
It's pretty stupid, but
it looks good though. Like I do need to watch it, and that truck is iconic with with the Green Goblin on the front.
It's a fun movie. It's Stephen King at the height of the cocaine, and
yes,
he directed it, and so yeah.
While we're on that, man, that Vestron line is fantastic, and I really hope they pick that back up.
I do too. There's some stuff that if you go buy those old DVDs that were like 8 packs that basically have those same movies on them, there are a few still that they haven't brought out. I'd even like to see. I think Earth Girls Are Easy is on one of those, and I don't know if that's been released or not, but that's classic 80s.
That'd be perfect. That'd be perfect for that line, man. I mean, they put out Blood Diner, which was way out of left field. Like for so long, that didn't even have a DVD release.
Yeah.
And then like it quietly came out on one of those like 4 or 8 packs, and then boom, we get a full-fledged Blu-ray with special features and everything. That was nice.
That would have been a prime Vinegar Syndrome release if.
Right. I could really see them putting that out. Yeah.
Another movie I've always enjoyed. Let's see, what year was this? My other two I'm going to talk about are actually Kino Lorber, and they're not horror. This was a 1988 movie, but it's Cop with James Woods. Crazy 80s kind of cop drama movie, and James Woods is just insane in it. So you got to love insane James Woods. So.
Oh yeah.
It's a great one. So.
Are these both by Kino?
Yeah, the next one I have is as well, but I'll let you go ahead if you've got something you want to discuss.
Oh, no, I was just going to talk about Kino, man. Like, I mean, for a boutique studio, they're pretty budget minded. I feel like you can find a lot of their titles for like 15 or less, which is crazy when you're talking about this kind of stuff. Now, that being said, I don't know if they pack a ton of special features into everything, though. Like, I don't know if it's
a little hit or miss. I don't think it's like Olive Films, which rarely has any special features, but I know their Rawhead Rex had quite a bit of stuff on it. I also feel like they're, and I mentioned this to Heath, I feel like they're like one of the big four boutique labels, but they're also probably the most underrated of those.
They kind of put everything out, man. I mean, they I don't have anything from them honestly right now. They put out a edition of Camp Nowhere, which is like my favorite movie from childhood. I need to get that. I was a little disappointed that there's no special features. I think the only thing on the disc is the trailer. But then again, who the hell is going to show up to talk about that movie? Like,
I mean, they just released things over all the genres. They put out an awesome edition of Cabin Boy with Chris Holland in it. Like loaded special features. You know, they just do everything. The other one I pulled from them that I was going to talk about is a movie I just watched as a kid. Like, it seems like all the time I would go to my uncle's house and he was always playing this movie. But it's an 80s movie with Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas, and they're like retired train robbers, and it's called Tough Guys. And it's hilarious. Eli Wallach, that's in a lot of the spaghetti westerns, is like their nemesis in it, and he's got some hilarious one-liners. And I just remember my uncle, his laugh when I was a kid, him laughing through that movie, and it was it was a favorite. I think mainly because of that, but I did watch it back, and it's still pretty good. So
it's amazing how sometimes like the memories attached to a movie,
definitely
can be as good or better than the movie itself.
I think he's the reason that I'm such a Three Stooges fan as well, you know?
Oh man, me and my dad used to watch Three Stooges every day after school. It was just like one of those things we could both find funny. It was nice.
I remember him just laughing through all of those, and it was a good time. So those are the kind of the three I wanted to talk about a little bit. Did you have any others? Are there any movies that you're kind of hope get that special treatment from one of these boutique labels?
Oh yeah, man. Like, I would love to see some of like the older Kevin Smith stuff, not Clerks, basically, but like Mallrats on. Get some sort of like real boutique release with some good special features and stuff. Even though I've heard a lot of that stuff, like I think Chasing Amy got a Criterion release, but like it was like the Great Value brand of Criterion releases. Like you could kind of get that anywhere. It wasn't. I remember when I saw that it had a Criterion release, I'm like, this doesn't necessarily add up. Like, this is easy to get to. It's not super expensive. But I think that carried over from the Laserdisc or whatever. Because if you listen to the commentary on that, he actually says, fuck DVD at the beginning of the commentary. No, man, a lot of that stuff I'd love to see get a proper release. They did one for Clerks back when it did its 10th anniversary, but nothing else has really gotten a special treatment.
I really think, speaking of Criterion, he could... have a good Criterion of Clerks too. I think
absolutely, man.
Should be visited and have some more talked about on it. So I love the Criterions too when they include the essays and good. I call it bathroom reading, but
man, I'm so hit and miss with Criterion. Like I have a couple overall, but I don't have much. And like Night of the Living Dead is one of them. Like that's the definitive way to see Night of the Living Dead. Great release. But, like, I'll give you an example. I was in a flea market about 2 years ago, and I'm not kidding, man. There were probably 30 Criterion Blu-rays.
Wow.
That had come from looked like it came from a library, like, up north somewhere. And I was like, oh, my God, there's got to be something good in here, right? I could not tell you any of those. I was like, I don't even know what the hell this is. Like, this doesn't... They put out a lot of stuff that's out of my wheelhouse, like, pretty artsy-fartsy, and, like, it's supposed to be, like, a higher brow of film, and... I'm very much about that, just like bottom feeding B movie. Like, so even though they do a fantastic job and stuff, it just doesn't necessarily fit with what I'm looking for.
So as the landscape of watching movies at home changes, you know, Criterion's done this. Obviously, there are some other streaming services, but when do you think we'll see some of these, like the Kinos or even Scream Factory, start up their own streaming subscription service?
Well, Shout has one.
They have the little free one, right?
Yeah, they had the little free ones. So I think at least the groundwork's there.
Right.
You're right. So I see that being something. I really do. So because they have, especially with Shout and Scream Factory, they've got to be the biggest, right? Like they have to have the most money behind them, the most titles. They have more than enough to do all that. I would also wager that I don't think they have the rights to the streaming of these movies, because there's a lot of stuff like you can find elsewhere. Yeah. I would almost bet that's a separate kind of contract, but I would say moving forward with the landscape changing, they will do something like that.
Yeah, I think I'm assuming that a lot of those movies are on Shudder, and I'm guessing that's their transfers that are on Shudder. It looks like their cover art on some of those when you click on them.
That's what's Amazon Prime. Like a lot of that stuff is switching to the cover art and even on Vudu or any other paid platforms, they use their cover art. So who knows? They may be licensing that out. They may be licensing that transfer and that likeness out, but I don't know.
I just feel it's going to be a something they try to do. I think Arrow actually has a channel on the Apple TV.
Really?
If I'm not mistaken, but I don't have an Apple TV, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, me either. That's a good segue, though, man, to talk about Arrow. Do you own very many Arrow releases?
I've got a few, not a whole lot, though.
I think I have one. I have Society. That's it. And I'll tell you that Arrow is confusing to me. This is making me sound really dumb, especially for somebody who's supposed to be a collector and into this stuff. I have not taken the time to be like, hey, what the hell is Region A and what's Region B? So I really, like, if I can't get it off like Best Buy or something, like I know I'm going to be able to watch the Society transfer, and I'll be able to watch that. But like when they do their sale, because they do a decent sale yearly. I went on there last year and I picked out a bunch of stuff, and like I'm noticing like, oh, well, that's not even going to play over here. And they might have the rights to a movie in the UK and they don't have it in the US. So it gets confusing. I know it probably shouldn't be, and I should probably just do my homework and find out, but I'm kind of scared by it, man. I don't want to order something that's, because those are expensive titles too, man, $30-$35. And, then I'm going to have to find a region-free Blu-ray player to play it, which is annoying. I'm so glad that 4K is natively region-free.
Yes. This
region locking shit I'm so glad it's going to be over.
I tell you what's interesting is I have I've got this Panasonic Blu-ray player. It's a little older, but there's some key sequence you can do on it and make it play region B or region C.
Yeah, there's a lot of DVD players like that. Like you could hack them with just the remote. Yeah.
So I had I don't have it anymore, but I had the old Region B Arrow Texas Chainsaw 2 set.
I understand that was a great set too.
I just switched over to the Scream Factory, and so I could watch it on any player.
And I'll tell you this, man, you can't even trust Amazon, because like I ordered the I forgot who puts it out. Oh, New Line, I guess, put out the Nightmare on Elm Street collection, and I found it on Amazon from Amazon proper in the US for $25. I was like, oh, that's the cheapest I've ever seen it. It comes in and it's really fat. It's probably 4 inches thick. And I'm like, this is not the one I saw in stores. Like the cover art and everything's fine. And then I see the 18 on the front of it. And I'm like, oh crap. Luckily, all those Blu-rays are region free, but the DVD that has the extras on it and Freddy's Nightmares is region locked. So I can't watch that one DVD.
I think the other thing that's confusing, I think it's Umbrella, the company out of Australia. Mm-hmm. A lot of their stuff will say it's region locked, but it's actually region free as well. So
yeah, so you almost can't even trust it. Like
right, you never know. But yeah, that's boutique Blu-rays. We talked a lot about them. Obviously, everyone buys them, and everyone buys their favorite ones, and probably a lot of people buy stuff they shelf and never watch again.
Man, it's ridiculous. I do it all the time.
We've talked before about having sealed movies on the shelf or gathering dust. So
I gotta quit doing that too. It's so counterproductive.
So yeah, it's been a great show. Great first show. Hope everyone has enjoyed it. And we're going to be discussing a number of topics coming up in future episodes. I kind of equate this show to a s'more. That's kind of where the name came from. A s'more is like a delicious little package of really good things, and hopefully this show will be the same. Good topics, good interviews, all put together in one show, and we hope to be around here for a while. So, Jonathan, tell the people where they can find you online and on YouTube.
You can find me at Mr. Bombastic on YouTube. Or type in Bombastic Reviews. in the search bar, and you can find me there. Also, go to Bombastic Reviews on Facebook and join my Facebook group there. I'll post things from time to time. I think I'm gonna post a companion video for what we're talking about here, and I can show you some stuff and what I got. And just come by and drop me some suggestions for videos.
And I am at Core Cinema. That's CORRE Cinema on YouTube and Instagram. So you can check me out there. And we will be back soon. And thanks for joining us.
See you guys.